Now, this will be a two-part video. We'll first look into the pitch deck structure. There's a pretty standardized pitch deck outline that most presentations follow. So we'll look at each slide and dig into what content you should include in each one of them. Then we'll look at some basic design guidelines to make sure your slides stand out. Remember, the pitch deck is the very first impression an investor might get at your business, and it should look stellar. The pitch deck outline. Let's not reinvent the wheel here. Dozens of accelerators, venture funds, successful startups, and internet personalities have published their ideal contents of a pitch deck. We took the liberty of redesigning many of them, and you can download most of them on the links below. But the truth is, they all have pretty much the same content. Pretty much every pitch deck follows this structure. A cover, the problem, the solution, a product demo, the market size, the business model, the competition slide, underlying magic, the go-to-market plan, the team slide, the traction milestones slide, and the fundraising information slide. For most of this section, I'm going to use the Uber pitch deck as an example. Now, the original version doesn't look particularly good, so we'll use our redesigned version instead. Now, we all know the size of the company that Uber has become, so naturally, this deck from back in 2008 has become one of the most sought after references for pitch decks. Our redesigned version gets thousands of downloads every month. I'll also quote a few others, like our own pitch deck and the Airbnb deck. The intro section. This is where you present your case, your problem, and your premise, and your proposed solution. This is a critical part of your pitch because it will determine if you can capture an investor's attention for the rest of the presentation. The cover slide. There's little to add here on the structure, so we'll look at some design tips later. The problem slide. So this is where you present the status quo. The founders of Uber made it very clear. Cabs in 2008 are far from a great user experience. They use aging and inefficient technology, and hailing is done by hand or by actual phone calls. I also love the way Airbnb summarized it in just 3 short sentences. Price is important for travelers, hotels are bubbles, and there's no way to book a room with a local or to host a spare room in your apartment. This was the reality in 2009. All they had was Craigslist and Couchsurfing, and neither of those was a pleasant user experience. See how down to earth this problem has been summarized? No complicated jargon, no debatable arguments, 100% straightforward, verifiable claims. Creating empathy with your investors is critical at this point. If you offer a questionable statement, then the whole premise of your pitch will be doubted. If the problem you're trying to solve can be applied to them, then great, take advantage of that. If you're solving a problem for an entirely different audience, then acknowledge it. And again, make sure your premise is solid. The solution slide. The solution is quite obviously you and your company and your product. Mention 3 or 4 core functions of your product and how they address the problems you just talked about. One important tip here is to, once again, avoid tech jargon. Think of benefits instead of features. Instead of saying, we have a fully responsive editor, rephrase that to, you can edit your presentation everywhere, even on your phone. This is a killer line right here. The convenience of a cab in New York City plus the experience of a professional chauffeur. The product demo. There's a whole thing about product demo. If you're presenting live, for example, then the product demo is actually a double-edged sword. You risk the demo crashing and ruining your whole pitch. So maybe sticking with a video could be safer. If you're sharing the pitch with an investor via email, then a video capture is actually a nice courtesy and a way to guarantee that they will get a glimpse of the product. You can't assume that they'll just go to your website, create an account, and check it out themselves. Finally, if you're in an in-person meeting, following the flow yourself on the app or the product might be the best choice. Remember, in either case, your video demo or your actual demo should reach the aha moment in 30 seconds or less. The why will make you rich section. If you manage to catch their attention in the first minute or so, now it's time to prove why you're gonna make them rich. Remember, few investors, actually no investors, will give you money because they like you, or because they like your team, or because they like your product. They'll do it because they believe your team, led by your vision, can grasp this market opportunity, create a sizable company, and more importantly, give them a sizable return on their investment. The market size. This is where you look at how large this company can become. 2 ways to tackle it, with what it's called like a bottom-up or a top-down market approach. A top-down analysis is calculated by determining the total market, then estimating your share of that market. So a typical top-down analysis might go something like, if you're selling rubber ducks to everybody that can use them, there are maybe 500,000 people in your area. And even if you only manage to land 5% of that market, it'll make you 25,000 sales. A bottom-up analysis is calculated by estimating potential sales to determine a total sales figure. A bottom-up study evaluates where products can be sold, the sales of comparable products, and the slice of current sales you can carve out. While it takes a lot more effort, the result is usually much more accurate. There's a great Inc.com article that you can look into for more details. So going back to our example, Uber planned to start as a New York City and San Francisco service, which already made a $1.3 billion per year market. Then they plan to expand to LA, Chicago, Houston, Pennsylvania, and Dallas, which already makes up 50% of the US taxi market. So based on this information, they estimated 3 scenarios. A worst case scenario where they remain like a 10-car company, 100 client service just in one city. A realistic scenario where Uber gets 5% of the top 5 US cities, which actually represents $20 to $30 million per year in profit. And then a best case scenario where Uber would become a market leader, $1 billion plus a year in revenue. Who would have guessed that their prediction actually fell short of the type of company they became? The business model slide. Now, the pitch deck business model slide is, in most cases, a slide that makes or breaks your pitch. I'm taking Airbnb's example for this one, whose business model is just dead simple. They take a 10% commission on each transaction. That's it. Airbnb makes money in many other ways these days, but the premise remains. There's a percentage of each transaction. When dealing with a 500 million serviceable market, which is the amount of budget plus online trips worldwide, even a small portion of the equation yields just fantastic economics. The founders elaborated by making a rough estimate that serving 15% of this addressable market would yield them $200 million worth of revenue in the first 3 years. A bold, but eventually accurate prediction. The competition slide. In this case, I'm going to use Slidebean's example. This grid approach to comparing your company to your competitors was made famous by Steve Jobs when he used to compare the iPhone to any other phone available at the time. If you have a product that stands far apart from your competitors, then this is the best way to make sure everybody understands that premise. In our case, the horizontal axis would be represented by time required to make a presentation or a pitch deck. And then quality of design, we would put that on the vertical axis. Traditional presentation software like PowerPoint would have had an average design quality with terrible efficiency. Prezi, for example, provides somewhat better results at the cost of even more time. All the way up to the extreme, you can create a top-of-the-line presentation using Adobe Illustrator, but this is a professional tool for professional designers. Slidebean's niche is right here, where high quality meets efficiency. And with this diagram, it's easy to see how it stands apart. Now that you understand how these work, take a look at the Airbnb deck. In this case, their axes are affordability and offline versus online transactions. This differentiates Airbnb from Hotels.com or Couchsurfing or Craigslist. The underlying magic, or the competitive advantage. The underlying magic slide, also referred to as the competitive advantage slide, is where you elaborate on the technologies and patents you've developed to make your product or service unique. Feel free to get much more technical on this slide. Going back to Uber, this is where they get to brag about their route optimization system, their reputation tracking, and the demand forecasting. That's right, the searches. As much as we users hate that, it's one of Uber's most powerful innovations. The go-to-market plan. The go-to-market slide should refer to your plans to acquire a mass audience. Now, the reality of any startup is that there's no way to know how these plans will work until you actually try them out. And you likely need to update this slide regularly as you try and fail with different marketing tactics. It's essential, however, to remember and fake it till you make it. Always have a plan and pitch it as if you're 100% sure that's the way to go. The point of this slide is proving that you can figure out ways to grow your business, both with a large pool of ideas and the ability to execute them. Airbnb's slide refers to 3 alternatives: events, partnerships, and the dual posting feature. In the end, they never managed to make a deal with Kayak, but they hit the nail on the head with the dual posting function. In a nutshell, they developed a bot that would take any Airbnb listing, repost it on Craigslist, and link back to the original Airbnb post, thus increasing their traffic and awareness, as well as the chances of getting a listing booked when they had fewer customers. The team slide. And we're almost done now. This slide should be simple. Mention your founders and why are you the right people to grow this company. Remember, the ideal founder combination is the hustler, hacker, hipster trio. A hustler, usually impersonated in the CEO, that can sell the company and keep investors excited around it. A hacker, often the CTO, that can lead the product development for the first few years. And finally, a hipster that can build a brand both through high quality design and marketing. Do not talk about your advisors here, your first employees, or actually anybody who is not 100% dedicated to the company. Traction and milestones. The traction or the milestones slide is another crucial part of your pitch. Actually, if you're pitching in front of an audience in a demo day type of event, this slide should probably go first, right after your cover. This gives you credibility right away and captures people's attention for the rest of your pitch. In the storytelling arch of your presentation, the traction is the lethal blow and the climax of your story. If you have revenue, and if that's growing, that should be the only chart on this slide. If you don't have any sales, actually, you might want to reconsider pitching investors at this point in your company. It's very, very tough to raise money without income. If you must, then use this opportunity to talk about your growth, your monthly or your weekly active users. The fundraising information. So both of the pitch deck templates we're referencing, Uber and Airbnb, have a final fundraising slide with their ask, how much money they're raising. In the US, however, the SEC has certain regulations as to whom can you show your financial data to. So you should be careful when sending your deck to people who aren't accredited investors. This is not my expertise by any means, but a couple of tips here are, so if you're pitching on stage in front of an audience, do not add this slide. If you're sending this deck privately to a VC, then you're probably okay. When in doubt, you can check this article for more info.